No, you just can see that clearly.
Okay.
But we also used heartbeat sensor back at the tip of the finger, and we were also recording, not really recording, getting the voice, but the voice was just there just to give a little bit of a texture to the object, because voices are always different.
And what was the E-clip? Is that part of the EEG?
Sorry?
Weren't there like E-clips for the...
Oh yeah, that was part of the EEG.
Oh, okay.
This other project, it's already from when I'm here in Bremen. So I did this on second semester of my master's, and this is a machine that I'm calling the new velocity, and I'll show the video and then I'll explain something later. This project I made during a course in this book called Hacks and Hoaxes, and we were studying different types of hacks and different types of hoaxes, and I stumbled upon the story of this island that appeared in Google, although this island never existed, and this island was undiscovered in 2012, although it was there on Google Earth and Google Maps and everywhere. And what I did is a machine to rescan this island and make fake data sets that are trying to prove the further existence of this island. So then when I am scanning actual sandy islets and transforming these into different data sets that I put up on an open data bank online to make up this hoax of an island that does not exist anymore, but this is the only physical existence of that island. And the way I did it, there is a small video with the prototype. Next one. So I basically just had two stepper motors, and I had an Arduino inside there controlling both of them, and a proximity sensor that is coming up and down. And the laser is just there for visual purposes. It's not really doing anything. People thought that I was actually lasering the sand and 3D printing something, but that's just insane, impossible. And so yeah, it's very simple. And then I parsed everything inside these boxes here. And inside this other one, I had a monitor connect to a Raspberry Pi. And I was communicating with the Arduino to the Raspberry, generating the visuals and the data sets, and that's already coming online that you can see on the website called the sandyislandreparts.net. And this is where, to me, it gets to a point that I quite like of working, because these things they're super simple in a way. You have 3D scanners and you have this sort of technology that it's just there, but the conceptual development that you have together with it, and then when you junction both things and go along with it, that's when it gets interesting to me. So for instance, part of the research to this project was this island was called the Sandy Island, and I picked up this sandy and transformed that into actual sand, and later I just found out that the sole materiality of this sand has something to do with data, and because it's always fleeting, it's hard to grasp, and it's never the same, and that was the point of this project. It was you can easily fake up these sort of things. Look how stupid it is. It's an island that is there on Google Earth, but I'm doing that with black sand on my desk. And yeah, and the last one that I wanted to show is the one that I'm actually finishing right now, and so I don't have the final documentation of it still. So it's an installation that I'm doing called the aerographer. So it's do you know the name? The topographer is the one who maps the topography of a place, and then I am creating this installation which is from the aerographer. It's mapping the wind or the tiny disturbances of air in a certain place. And what this basically do is I'm always measuring 2 points of air, and always calculating the difference between the two of them, and then I move these things up and down and transform the map of that place according to the wind. This is again, like, if you just think about the technology that it's behind it, a tree does that. If you look at a tree, you can see that there is wind blowing there, and that's already an index of what's happening. But the point of this thing here is actually to make other appointments to conceptual development that I was working with in philosophical terms, and maybe we can talk about that later. But this is pretty much how I set it up, and after that setup, it just moves. And the idea, this is the first module that I've made, but this thing is going to be big in space, and then I'm going to connect these dots and create a sort of a living architecture there, that it's always changing with the wind and the way that people behave and the way that people interact with the space is also different. And what interests me about getting this sort of data from the air is just that the air is also something that is constantly changing, and it's inherently chaotic. So you can never predict what the air is. You can predict a little bit how the air is going to behave, but when you're measuring such tiny differences as I am, any sort of somebody passing by already changes the whole system. Or if somebody blows air or a wind comes in, it already changed the whole system. And the way that I made it, so this was like 3 months of intense experimentation, but the final setup that I have is I have these 3 stepper motors here, and I built up this custom PCB there in the center, which is basically just an Arduino that I'm using, but I disassembled all the Arduino components and built my own inside the PCB. And another thing that I think it was quite cool, and I'm looking forward to release that as open source as well, was just this super cheap and easy to build wind sensor. It's based on this sort of technology called a hot wire anemometer. And anemometer is for measuring wind. And usually these sort of devices are super expensive to buy in the market, so 20, 30 euros or so, or more. If you get a good one, it's like 500 euros. And this one here I just built with €1. And it's basically 2 diodes that I have. One diode is enclosed into a box, and another diode is outside of the box. And what I'm basically doing is just applying a hard voltage on it, so high current, and both of them get hot. And then a wind or something disturbs one of these sides, so the one that it's not inside the box. Then I can measure the difference between the 2 of them. And this is how I sort of created a wind sensor in a very cheap manner. And yeah, and then I just connect this to the Arduino and go. So I have one of the diodes is there at the corners, and I have one in the center, which is this one, and then the Arduino is basically mapping this whole thing and transforming that into linear motion. I guess that's it. I know that it was very fast, but if somebody has any question or want to say something, please feel free. Or not, I'll be here during the next hour, I guess, and then we can talk.
Is Edgar already here? Because, also Elvira hat noch eigentlich was anderes geplant, aber ich weiß nicht. Mit wem und wann und was? Florian? Nee, Florian haben wir gesagt, verschieben wir auf nächste Woche. Aber